Hello and good evening. Today we're going to give you an introduction to basic fly fishing. My name is Jonathon Morrissey. I was the former World Cup wet trout fly angling champion at the age of 18. So what do we need when we want to go fly fishing? Well, first thing is obviously a rod. This is a fly rod. It's a highly balanced rod because I can balance the rod, the reel and the line on one single finger towards the top of the cork. But you don't need something as specialised as that. Really, we just need a rod which has good action. That's a rod which flicks a lot. We need a fly reel, obviously. We need fly line. This typically floats on the water because it is less dense than the water. We need some cast which leads down to the fly, thin line, and we also need a selection of flies. And as you can see, the selection here is highly varied. There's some very large flies here which are typically for lake trout. These represent some wet flies, some dry fly, and these ones here actually represent species of the mayfly. For river fish, the flies are typically much smaller, so these are a selection of some dry flies. We have some wet flies here. These represent the different stages of the trout flies that we see on the river, from the nymph to the pupa, the larva, right up to the emerging fly. We also have some dry representations, which is the latter stages of the fly life, and maybe some cross-species fly fishing, such as some salmon flies, sea trout flies, and even flies for pike or saltwater bass. We'll also need a net, preferably a knotless net. Knotless nets protect the fish when we land them. We don't want to do them any harm because we like to practice catch and release. And also we need some other gear, maybe some waterproof waders so that we can get into the water. But not all fly fishing needs to be done from within the water, it can be done from the bank. But this would be the basic form of your equipment. Okay, so looking at the flies more closely, here we have a small selection of flies from actually the one family. That might be hard to believe given the difference between the five of them, but this is the one species. Over here we have the nymph, or the beginning of a fly. This will progress from the bottom of a river or lake system into a fly that becomes more mobile. It'll go towards what we call an emerger. And this would be a representation, or a yellow gosling, of this nymph as it moves towards adult lifehood. Then when it presents as an adult on the top of the water, it will shake off its outer shell casing, or shuck, which has this sort of colouring, and present as this green olive coloured fly with wings that it'll dry off, and it'll fly away to the nearest mainland, where it will dance above the trees with female and male species intermingled. There it will form a mate for the day. Having mated, it will then return to the water as what we call a spent mayfly. That's this colouring here. This darker representation, the fly returns to the water, lays its eggs, completes the circle of life, and then proceeds to die. At this adult phase, there are many varieties, many colours, and it depends on different river systems and different lake systems. But one may not work very well on one system, whereas it could be killer or deadly on another. Today we are more concerned with going river fishing, so the flies for the river, as stated already, are considerably smaller. I've left in the lake fly to show a size comparison, and the size difference is dramatic. Once again, the flies across here are from a single species, or river olive. This one here is the nymph, which is on the bottom of the water, scurries around amongst the rocks and the sand, and as it matures towards adulthood, it becomes more mobile. Then it moves up to the top of the water and hatches as an adult olive, and may have a wing pattern as such. Towards the later in the evening, the fly typically darkens throughout the day and could go back to the water almost brown or ginger in colour. And this is the fly that we're going to try and catch a trout on today, or ginger quill. It's a very beautiful fly and has given me some great success. Let's go down to the river and hopefully catch us a fish. And now we're going to show you the different types of casting. There's the traditional over the head, back and forth. The purpose of casting is to accelerate and decelerate the line. Rise the fly in the air, and then at the point of release we let it go, which delivers the fly forward. We typically then watch your line come around, address the fly, hopefully pick up on a fish. Another type of cast, which when we have a high background, is a roll cast. For this we bring the line alongside it, we flick it forward, and the line turns over and delivers the fly. So to show that one again, bring it alongside it, flick it forward, and it delivers the line forward. If we wanted to get our fly under something low lying, we may have to go for a side cast, as such, or we can deliver the fly in underneath the target. It's equally likely that one could catch small trout, big trout, salmon par, or maybe even a salmon if you're lucky enough. If you approach the river or the lake with one thing in mind, dry fly fishing, you'll probably go home empty-handed. But if you get to the river and you find that there's no rising fish, you may be able to prompt one, but if you switch tactics and try some wet fly fishing, you might find more success. To take a moment, have a look around, try and identify the hatch. Earlier on we looked at the olives and the mayflies, but there's no point in looking for olives and mayflies in August, September, or even February. When presenting a dry fly to a fish, we're trying to imitate the natural thing. If it pulls in the water, if it doesn't move correctly, if it drags, if it sinks, if there's a leader present from it, the trout will ignore it. Fly fishing is the art of deception. We want to deceive a trout, a wild natural creature, into believing that this artificially prepared item is actually a direct representation of what it wants to eat. Sometimes there's nothing else to be said when you get on and enjoy the fishing. To be in a river surrounded by beautiful scenery and wildlife, the swans swimming, trout rising, and hopefully a fish on the end of the line. There we have it. Beautiful wild river brown trout. Beautiful spots, colouring, very dark in colour because it lives next to the weir which is formed from rock. And there's the fly, perfectly taken in his mouth. A beautiful wild trout. Maybe never been caught before, may never get caught again. Away he goes. Where there's one, there's another.